Slavery in Canada is often overshadowed by the history of the Underground Railroad and Canada's reputation as a refuge for freedom seekers. However, the reality is more complex. From the 1600s through the early 1800s, slavery was a legal and accepted institution in what is now Canada, practiced under both French and British colonial rule. Today we trace the historical arc of slavery in Canada, beginning with its roots in New France, the influence of the Code Noir, the continuation of slavery under British rule, the acts of resistance by enslaved people, and finally, its abolition. Slavery in Canada began during the era of New France in the early 17th century. The first recorded enslaved person in the colony was a young boy from Madagascar or Guinea named Oliver Lejeune, purchased in 1629. Though New France did not develop a plantation economy like those in the Caribbean or the American South, slavery nonetheless became institutionalized. Enslaved people in New France fell into two main categories: indigenous slaves and Africans. Indigenous slaves were often captured during conflicts with other First Nations and sold or traded to French colonists. Africans were imported in smaller numbers, typically to serve as household servants for elite families. The Code Noir, issued by King Louis XIV in 1685 for the French Caribbean colonies, was not officially adopted in New France, but its principles impacted societal norms. The Code Noir regulated the life, behavior, and treatment of enslaved Africans and required that they be baptized into the Catholic faith. Though New France never had large-scale sugar plantations, the Code Noir's impact helped justify slavery and influence colonial policy and practices. While not codified to the same extent in New France, slavery became a recognized legal institution by the early 18th century. Colonial officials granted permission for the purchase and ownership of slaves, and courts enforced contracts and punishments involving enslaved people. By the time of the British conquest of New France in 1763, approximately 3,600 enslaved people had lived in the colony, about 2/3 of them indigenous and 1/3 of them of African descent. When the British took control of New France following the Treaty of Paris in 1763, slavery did not end, it adapted. The British continued to recognize the property rights of slaveholders. As loyalists fled the American Revolution and resettled in what became Upper and Lower Canada, present-day Ontario and Quebec, many brought their enslaved African and indigenous servants with them.